So the houseman, I can remember, you kind of did your best. And there was a sort of, you can't worry too much about when it goes wrong or you'll just melt in it. You move on and you don't let it stress you out too much. The problem with which is you're not learning from it. And so the learning's really important. So you change. One of the important things I remember doing, we did some work on line infections, and something that they said, look, it happens, you just have to accept it. And they didn't have one in any of the ITUs in the Southwest for 3 months, and they realized it doesn't have to happen. And I remember it was that light bulb moment. They went, wow, you can fix this.
Hello and welcome to The Connection, where RLDatix's Chief Customer Officer Liz Jones and Medical Director Darren Kilroy are joined by leaders and colleagues from within the healthcare industry. In The Connection, we explore how people and technology in healthcare can come together to create great experiences and support patient safety. We hope you enjoy listening.
Welcome to the Connection podcast. It's great to see you all again. My name is Darren Kilroy, Medical Director here at RLDatix. I'm joined today by Liz Jones, and we're really pleased to have as our special guest today Aidan Fowler, who is for those who don't know, is the National Director of Patient Safety at NHS England. We're at the Patient Safety Congress here in Manchester. Aidan, great to see you.
Hi, both.
Nice to see you again.
I'm grateful for your time. Aidan, our podcast is around the people involved in healthcare and risk. It's not around roles and it's not around policy. It's certainly not around software. And what we're always keen to get under the skin of on the podcast is something around the people behind the role. And we're wondering, to set the scene today, just give us a pen picture of how you ended up being involved in patient safety at all, ever, back in the day. When did it first crop up in your world?
What an interesting question. So for those who don't know, so my background is medical. Why did I go into medicine in the first place? I think I was interested in how the body worked, not least my own body. I'm a born hypochondriac, so I've had everything over the years, but not actually. Yeah, exactly. So I was really interested in what makes things work. I had that book, What Makes Things Work. Yeah. So I went into it in part because of that curiosity. Went down the career path of surgery, quite liked the sort of physical doing stuff. And somebody once said to me, a physician, he said, well, to us, knowledge is everything. You want to fix stuff as surgeons. I'm going, yep, that's kind of the point. So I liked fixing things. And I know I spent a lot of time advocating people through a system that didn't quite work for them. And so I got into the quality improvement thing, and kind of the patient safety specific bit was almost accidental as a spin-off from that, where somebody said, oh, look, there's this patient safety work we're doing. Will you get involved from an improvement point of view? And then got into it regionally, and then Wales, then England. And actually, I reflect that patient safety was not really a term when I was growing up as a medical student. It came about somewhere, almost out of nowhere, that we started talking about.
Mm. And were you from a medical family, Aidan?
No, I'm a mutation.
Yeah, same.
No, I mean, it was more law than anything else. So I kind of, I'm phenotypically a lawyer. So I have that sort of constant argument thing that drives people mad, where I debate stuff almost just for the hell of it. You know, devil's advocate. My father would always sit at the table and argue the alternative, and we'd try and catch him out and say, well, 2 weeks ago you said a different thing, because he was always...
That makes a lot of sense, though, in terms of quality and patient safety, right?
I thought you were judging me there.
That comes later.
That's interesting, right? The legal thing there. That's probably played into your interest in this then, hasn't it?
Yeah, a bit. I mean,
somehow.
There's a bit... I'm trying to push back from going constantly down the legal route in safety of dealing with things after the fact and the legal side and the inquiries and all that sort of stuff. It's important, but actually you kind of want to stick with the clinical side and the improvement side a bit as well, and not just get channeled. It's very easy to be channeled into something. You develop expertise and then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And I've gone that route a bit, and I'm kind of, it got to the point recently where someone described me as Winston Wolfe. Now, for those who've never seen Pulp Fiction, that will mean nothing. but he's the kind of guy who clears stuff up when it's gone wrong. And I don't want to be that. I want to be the person who's stopping it going wrong, not just the person who comes after the fact, I think.
And do you think that something, you're right, patient safety wasn't something people talked about even 20 years ago. They talked about quality, and they talked about compliance, and they talked about governance, but patient safety sort of then creeped into the lexicon, actually. And do you think we've gone too far now, and it's such a specialty that it isn't something that people think is about everybody?
So we've had that debate this morning of it's everyone's business, but how do you lead it? And I think it's both and. Yes, I mean it's been through phases. So as a houseman, I can remember you kind of did your best, and I think there was a sort of, you can't worry too much about when it goes wrong or you'll just melt in it. So you kind of move on. Yeah, you move on. Yeah. And you don't let it stress you out too much. The problem with which is you're not learning from it. And so the learning's really important. So you change, and they talk about these 5 different stages of patient safety culture of the pathological, which I think is a pejorative term. I don't think people were deliberately ignoring it. I think it was just that self-protection element. The hours were longer, there was a lot of pressure. There wasn't the focus on litigation and errors. It was kind of accepted. But you were kind of protecting yourself by saying we won't worry too much about these things that go wrong because they're inevitable. And one of the important things I remember doing work in the Southwest was when somebody said, won't use the term, but it happens. And then we did some work on line infections, and something that they said, look, it happens, you just have to accept it. And they didn't have one in any of the ITUs in the Southwest for 3 months, and they realized it doesn't have to happen. And I remember it was that light bulb moment. They went, wow, you can fix this. We didn't realize, we just normalized it. So you have to move through these phases from the sort of reacting to it and the bureaucratic phase, which we're heavily in, where we create lots of work and it becomes burdensome. Then getting into that proactive bit, which is quite difficult, starting to do stuff in real-time data, getting into the proactive bit before you get to the sort of generative, what does this mean for other areas thing? So there's a lot of different cultural shifts that need to occur. And I think we're in the midst of that, but that bit's really important. What was your original question? Because I've gone off down a tangent. You see, you've got to pull me back.
Well, so it's just about the who owns patient safety, and I think you answered it, but you
it's both and. So we've created structure because I can remember going to an outstanding organisation and talking about patient safety specialists. And they said, but patient safety is everyone's business. And I said, yes, but tell me how your governance works around it. And they go, well, we don't have a patient safety team. It does this, and then it goes through the patient safety panel. I went, aha, what's that? It's essentially a team. There has to be some structure around it. And it's not about having anyone who's disengaged from the agenda. And it's not about having someone who tells anaesthetists how to give a safe anaesthetic or anything else. It's about saying there is somebody who understands what's going on in the world of patient safety, who's now got training in patient safety, who understands our different programs like the new database, the new approach to investigating and so on, and can support the implementation of that for their institution and act as an expert reference point. And also, do not underestimate the impact of networks and having people who are connected together in this.
But where are we at, Aidan, do you think now in terms of training and education with the new generation of people coming into healthcare, med students, nursing students? Where is all that now, you think, in terms of safety, and how are we getting on with that, and what's your sort
just the small questions?
Yeah, exactly. We've only got 10 minutes, Aidan, so I just wanted to just nail these issues. Exactly.
Just give us what we should do. Look, I think we talk about it a lot more. I think it's important that these things are embedded from the start. I think there are broader things around safety than just teaching safety and education, because I think we have quite siloed education still. And that is then, so the cultural piece is developed by how you socialize and integrate people from the start. And, we've just had a bit of a vigorous debate about clinical leadership. And should we have a nurse director? Should we have a medical director in whatever organization? And you're going, really? Have we not moved on from these named roles and the dominance of certain ones and the AHPs? And I just had an AHP come up and say, thank you for mentioning us, because we get ignored. And of course, we don't develop together as students. And I think that's a problem when we hit the floor, is we've not been used to working together. And in safety terms, being able to work together, and it happens elsewhere, you know, Cuba, they all train together, they all have relationships together, etc. Germany. So I think actually the education piece is broader than just saying, here's some stuff on patient safety you might want to know. It's okay, thinking about how we are educated in a way that makes us better at working together.
And that's writ large in maternity safety then, isn't it? Because that's where team working comes to its crux there, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, the culture is really important. So I was a gut surgeon, and we would deal with patients with a condition called colitis. And people used to say you want an aggressive physician, a conservative surgeon. So you want the physician to bring the surgeon in early and the surgeon to hold off until it was necessary. Because what we were considering is medical treatment versus surgery. And you wanted us there for the journey, introducing ourselves, getting to know the patient just in case, but holding back until it became obvious, and it did over time, that surgery might be indicated. And surgery was a very big deal in that situation. But there was that culture of working together on care, which hasn't always been. And I think it's important with maternity that the narrative is problematic, because you get the impression all of maternity is bad, and it is not. But where it works well, the point is that you have obstetricians and midwives, and remember, obstetric anaesthetists and neonatologists, and we sometimes forget that there are more than just the two professions in maternity working together actually for the benefit of the person giving birth around their care, and not saying we don't want to intervene and we're intervening too often and that sort of thing, but saying actually the reason we sometimes intervene is because that's the only way to deliver safely and it's the best way, and we need to make that decision together with a person, not in this case a patient. Arguably they're not ill, this is a normal bit of physiology, but working together to get the best outcome. And I think where we've seen problems, and we have, that hasn't been the case. And actually what we don't see enough of is people who come to me and say, but it really works well in my unit. And if only someone would come to my unit, because we all work together and that's how it works.
Yeah, to highlight those,
absolutely.
good examples. Well, I'd love to talk about the Gen AI stuff and what that means for this, but that's for another day. In the meantime, just as we get towards the end, you mentioned the word advocacy in terms of part of how you'd got into patient safety. And as I'm observing you and listening to where your stories take you, you always come back to the outcomes for the patients, which I guess on the one hand is a relief, and on fully saying it as it is. But I was thinking about who the people are, not naming names, but in your career, either who are the people that have really shaped your career, or can you share an example of the people around you?
I think it's really good to have mentors. I have to say in surgery, you saw some interesting behaviours back in the day.
I think you've shared some of these.
There was a bit of doubt in my training where I thought,
I'm going back to law.
These guys. yeah.
I think it's easier to sort of identify the people when I made a conscious decision to move into other areas, who I've thought, actually, you've changed my thinking. And there's a handful of people who changed my thinking. So Don Berwick. So I went and I did some change management stuff, and I gave a pretty wild talk to our local trust that I was working for. And it was called Tesco's, Toyota, the Trust and the Triffids, right? I know, mad. And the Tesco's was the putting the customer first thing, and Toyota was Toyota process control, and the Triffids were the people that we were being held back by, who were sort of, poisonous and stopped us making progress and all that sort of thing. And it was a bit of a mad talk. And the chief exec went, who the hell's he? And they said, he's a surgeon. He went, no, he's not a surgeon. And he took me away to the IHI conference, and I saw Don Berwick speak. And I don't know whether you've seen it, but it's a big thing in America, 6,000 people. You can't leave the room because it's a walk of about 10 minutes and everyone sees you. So you're there for the duration, and they say, be ready. He's going to make everyone cry. And you're going, oh, I'm a surgeon. I'm not going to blub, But it was really impactful. And I thought, oh, get me a bit of this. And I went and did the Improvement Advisor course with them. And, hands off to the chief executive, said, yeah, you can do that. So I went to the improvement advisor course, and I got into that and met Don Berwick and thought, and I've met him subsequently. He's been a great mentor, and he always makes time for you, and he's very sage. And you think, I've bossed this. And he adds something. You go, oh, I wish I'd thought of that. I wish I'd thought of that. So he's one. There was a guy called Mark Moore, as part of a program that Jeremy Hunt came up with, a leadership program went on. We got to go to Harvard. And there was a guy called Mark Moore there who talked about public value. And it's just that simple concept of always bringing it back to what is the public value in what you're doing. And I then went and did a project in South Bristol where it transformed the way I took. It would have been a very technical thing. We need to fill this hospital with some stuff rather than what is the population need. And when you offer that, people go, this makes sense. And they support it, and it works because actually you're trying to do sensible things. And too often we're trying to do things that actually don't make sense to people and they don't want to do it. And then we go, why are they resisting our thing? It's because it's nonsense. So he was a shaper, and there are others. And you know what? Sometimes it comes from sources that people wouldn't expect. So when I was thinking about quality management stuff, I went to somebody, I won't embarrass him by naming them, who's a physiotherapist who's got into quality improvement in East London, and said, this is what we're doing around QMS, and this is how our service lines work. And I thought I should really understand this. And she explained to me, embedding it in the governance and how this process was working at service line. And I thought, God, that makes absolute sense. This is what we need to be doing, is we get service lines that are empowered. They know where they're at, where they should be. They've got the capacity and capability to make the change they need to make to get better. Self-improving service lines is where it's at. And it's that embedding it in the governance. So on a monthly basis, instead of just, have we done the numbers? Have we done the finance? They lead with quality. Is the quality of our service where it should be on any measure? And if it isn't, how are we course correcting? Because this is our direction of travel. Weirdly, that's different thinking from a lot of what we have now. And so actually, you know, yes, the well-known people can lead you. Sometimes actually it's people on the ground who've just made sense of something you've struggled with and make a difference.
Absolutely. We're out of time, aren't we?
We are.
But the killer question for me to end with here is always for
is this the Sean Linton question?
No, it's not.
Try and drop me in
It's far more interesting than the Sean Linton question. Is from your surgical days, Aidan, what was your favourite procedure? Always ask a surgeon this on these podcasts. What was if you had to pick one desert island operation, Aidan, what are you going to perform for the rest of your days?
What do you know? I did enjoy a good right hemicolectomy, I have to say. I quite enjoyed that. I did a lot of pelvic floor surgery, and a nice sphincter repair is a thing of beauty, but maybe that's not what you want to admit to on a podcast.
The only time anyone's ever said that on our podcast.
I suspect it's the only time you will ever hear that said.
Exactly. You heard it first and last here.
Yeah.
Thank you for your time, Aidan.
Yeah, huge thanks. And I think you sharing people that have inspired you, I think it's so important that we get to hear stories from people like you that are trying to change something for the citizens in the country. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks for your time.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you for joining us on today's episode of The Connection. We hope this episode has provided you with valuable insights on the role that both technology and people play within the healthcare landscape. For more information and resources, visit RLDatix.com. Don't forget to subscribe to The Connection on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or any other podcast platform you use. Join us next time as we continue to explore how healthcare is impacted by connecting people and technology. On behalf of the RLDatix team, thanks for listening.